All right. Good.
Here we go. Now it's just preparing. And well, it's good to see you. You look great.
Well, thank you. I feel great. Thank goodness.
Yeah, you look great.
You
So
look great yourself, Ray.
thank you. Uh, yeah, I'm gonna just go live here. And then I'm just gonna come back here. And so, um, so what have you been up to since the last time we talked?
I'm writing away on my book. Well, of course, I'm being locked down too. I'm with a group of 150 older people, and I don't want to bring in any diseases into our building. So I haven't been going out much. I go to the grocery store and I sit in front of my computer and work on my next book. So, and thank God for the book because it gives me something to do.
Yeah, yeah.
How about you?
Yeah, well, I've been busy. There's two areas that I'm really focused on in my life. In both, I guess a lot of people are always doing things that are helpful. Um, but I'm in the health and well-being. Oh, you're part of our group too. We have that 360 Connect group. Uh,
Yes, I am. I
just
wish I had more time to be with them, but right
yeah.
now I'm
Well,
slipping behind on my date for publishing this book. So I'm spending all my time there.
yeah. So they were so they're I like to focus on that health and well-being, and it has a lot to do with a lot of different things. I did an interview with a gentleman that has a product. He calls it the Gravity Pal. It's an inversion board, and that has actually great things for your mind as well. Um, and I'm also in the financial area where I help people see um, their way clear of taking back control of their finances. Um, and that's a wonderful thing to see what it can do to change people's lives. I mean, I have people that have been doing it for a while, and they've used this tool to get into real estate investing and different types of investing, but very safe, uh, not in the stock market either. So anyway, but that's what I've been up to. And,
Well, I think that's great. Particularly, we don't know what the future is going to bring, and with all this lockdown and all the money that's going out, I don't know what's going to happen. Somebody like you is very valuable.
thank you, Bill. And you as well. So we spoke the last time, and you told us your story about how you come down with dementia and pulled yourself back from I like to call it the abyss, because that must be what it feels like in a sense. So do you want to continue with talking about your journey, or do you want to talk about some other things?
Well, today I'd like to talk about the fact that if I am successful in talking to you about this, I will show you that dementia is easy to understand, real
Mm,
easy to understand.
yeah, because as I mentioned another time, that I always kind of get dementia and Alzheimer's mixed up, and I'd like to get that cleared up, what that really is.
Yeah, that was a great question on your part. It's something I actually had not thought to talk about today, but it's very worthwhile. The difference between the types of dementia like Lewy body dementia and Parkinson's and Alzheimer's is mostly the area of the head it happens in. I
Mm,
think that the cause is really the same. One of the reasons for knowing this, I know I have Alzheimer's, and at times I have Parkinson type symptoms. And so one flows right into the other. It's like being Irish American or Italian American or African American. All of these divisions are Americans. It's just that they come from a little different area. And that's really what the also with the dementias are.
Oh, oh, that's interesting. So different parts of the brain.
Yes,
Are they,
absolutely.
are they like in close proximity to other neurological things, like Lou Gehrig's disease and things like that? Or is that?
They all operate in the same area. I can't carry it further than that. I know that you read on what parts of the brain, and I do look at the pictures of the brain to see where it's happening in. There's a lot of sharing in the brain of nerves that have origin in maybe a couple of areas. So it'd be hard for me to answer that question for you.
That's an interesting thing you said there. I about that they share information, different parts of the brain. I read a book titled "Your Mind." I might not get this exact, but it was something like "Your mind is not a rock," and the book was really about how your brain can adapt when things happen to it.
Oh, yes. That's one of the encouraging things. One of the things I want to tell people who will listen is that contrary to a lot of opinion, the dementias are not lethal if you know their cause. And because to me, all the dementias are entirely food caused, diet caused. That doesn't mean that being exercise and so forth is not valuable. It is valuable. And if you let yourself go, then no matter what you eat, you're going to be in trouble. But the basis of it are what we eat and drink. That's what causes the dementias. And it has a real good explanation. It's an explanation that a lot of people don't agree with. And the very definition of dementia is that it is a lethal disease, and that once you have it, you may be able to slow it down, but you can't stop it, and you eventually will die from it. Well, I was deep in dementia in 2015, and I find that as long as I watch what I'm eating and do exercise, mind and body, the mind exercise is, of course, working with the book, and the body exercise, I take walks 3, 4, 5 times a week, and there are a couple of miles in the snow, and that really gets you pretty good exercise. And so you need all of that. But the diet is the major part of the problem, and that's where I wanted to explain to people where that problem is coming from.
Yeah, well, yeah, go ahead and elaborate on that.
Okay, well, before starting, I have to give a caution, and that's that never try to help yourself with anything unless you have evaluation with your own doctor, and maybe a specialist too. Just because I say something doesn't mean you should run out and do it. It means you should go on to your doctor and say, what do you think? Because sometimes what appears to be a dementia, for instance, is not a dementia, but something else, and there's a cure for that. And you would miss that if you don't go to somebody and have the proper diagnosis. But saying that you do, saying that the diagnosis is dementia, then there's something you can do. And one of the best treatments that you can ever do is home treatment, just doing it at your home. And to think that you can take on a dementia at your dining room table, I think is great. Now, not that people will agree with that, and particularly dietitians. I wish that I had dietitians that would agree, but I've had several dietitians read my book, and the question or the comment they also always make is that they discourage their clients from following my example and what I talk about, because I might expose them to false hope. And then when it didn't work, then they would be just very depressed by it. But the opposite look at that is that if they don't try and they have something that they can recover from, why not let them try?
Right. Yeah.
So some are going to miss, but a lot I think will make it.
Yeah. Well, the analogy that immediately comes to mind is all the hundreds of different kinds of diets that are out there for people to lose weight. And most people fall off the wagon. They don't do it and it doesn't work for them. And so they get discouraged. And there are hundreds of different kinds. So the whole thing about getting disappointed, you know, that can be in any area of our lives. It doesn't just have to do with this,
Yes, right.
you know.
One thing that keeps that keeps me on the diet is the fact that I don't want to be demented. I don't want to have somebody come in. I want to have somebody take the keys away from me. I want my independence. I want to drive down to Florida if I wanted, which I don't. I love Minnesota and I stay here.
Yeah.
I go to the store and pick up groceries. I want to go to a movie and see a movie. I want the ability, the freedom to do that. And if I've got dementia, I'm locked up in a ward, and I don't have that freedom. And somebody comes along and it just makes me feel just terrible. I might have messed up the bed at night and they have to clean it up. I would rather be like I am today, working away, trying to get my next book done than sitting there in a mess. The thought just strikes me that if somebody tries my diet and takes the time to let it work, because it takes some months, you're going to have to rebuild the brain again, which does rebuild itself if you stop killing it with the foods that you have. If somebody gives the time, which probably is at least a year, and they feel themselves coming out of dementia, let's say they've got the symptoms and they're starting to come out, every time that they get away from it too significantly, the problem comes back. And that will keep them on the diet because it works. And that's I agree with you, the only way that we can have people follow a diet as a doctor, and this is the way I practiced in my practice too. These same foods that cause dementia also cause other diseases too. And I never thought that a patient would just simply take what I told them to do and do it for more than a short period of time, unless they found out that if they didn't, they would go downhill and then they'd go back to it. And fortunately, if they cheat and they start getting symptoms back, they can go back on the diet and they don't lose very much. In other words, they're not permanently scarred by taking a little time where they try it. So I agree with what you're saying. Those diets, any diet is hard to follow because you have to give up foods that you like, and you'd better present something to the person that you're telling to follow the diet that makes it worthwhile for them to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I in the two areas that I focus on, the health and the financial, they both, and it's true with most things, the individual has to be responsible for themselves and they have to follow it, whatever it is that they're trying to regain or establish. And so the cheating, you're not cheating anybody but yourself. So it's best just to do it if you really want to see the results.
I think it's necessary really to do it at times just to check it.
Yeah.
Now, let's say that my diet is, I have a very stringent diet because I have severe dementia, not easy dementia. I was going downhill. At the time in 2015, I was losing my ability to talk. And as you can see, I got it back again.
Yeah.
But even for me, I notice that when I get into trouble and I start having symptoms back, it always gets me back into the diet because I don't want to go downhill. I don't want to have that horrible vision in my head of how dependent I will be in a locked ward. I don't want it.
Hmm. Um, so can you tell us a little bit, just so that people can maybe we can build a little curiosity, in the sense that that in your book, um, the one that I originally got was Retaining the Mind, and you had these 5 areas of things that they should do. So I wondered if you could just, I don't know if there's particular foods that people should, according to your diet, stay away from.
Uh,
Is
That's
that
one of the things that's a little bit difficult about my diet, and the fact that all the foods that we eat have poisons in them, and that's where dementia is coming from. It's coming from the injury that strikes us when we eat the foods that we eat. Why do they all have poisons in them? Well, they have to have poisons in them because they have to stay alive. You put a little seed, say, of a food plant into the soil, and it springs up. And the birds don't eat it, and the grazing animals don't eat it because it makes them sick, and the insects don't eat it. And when it rains, it doesn't get moldy. And the only way it can do that is because it has poisons that keep it alive, poisons that fend off the mold in the rain that makes a horse or cow sick if they eat it. Um, and and the body, um, that's where the problem comes in. Some of these poisons are very, very strong. Others are not so strong. I have some illustrations of just normal food families and the poisons that are in them. And let me tell you a little bit about it. If we look at foods like onion, garlic, leek, and chive, they belong to the allium family, and they have they contain a poison that bothers dogs, cats, and some types of livestock. I won't say the name of the poison because it's hard to say, and nobody's going to remember it anyway.
Yeah.
If you look at just a food plant like asparagus, we eat the stalks that come up, but the berries on the plant are poisonous. So you see the poison there. People are used to eating citrus fruits like lemon and lime, and they contain ingredients that kill or repel pests. Since the ingredients form naturally in the fruit, citrus peels are safe to use as insecticides, and we're eating them. Many companies make flea shampoos, insecticides, or gardeners use them to keep their plants free of insects and other problems.
Mm. Yeah.
Animals are also affected by it too, and I thought some of these examples were kind of good. Birds are unfazed by the toxic oil produced by the poison ivy plant. Not that we eat it, but they love to eat the berries from the plant, and they're not bothered by the poison. Monarch butterflies chomp on milkweed, and that's a poison, has a poison too, and they become poisonous for other animals to eat. Apple has a poison called amygdalin, which is a lethal poison like cyanide. Lima beans have a notoriety above all other legumes with a high content of cyanide base marin contained in the seeds, and hence the beans absolutely need to be cooked thoroughly with the boiled water drained. Cashews, this shell of contains poison. Rhubarb contains lethal toxins. I talk about asparagus, and then you get the whole nightshade families, which do have poisons by themselves. But they also include tomato, pepper, and potatoes. And if you've read my books, you know that I feel very strongly that one of our main poisons is citric acid in our diet. And what I am most afraid of is that we take a huge chunk of acid when we drink an orange juice or eat a fruit with citrus in it, that can directly affect the proteins in our cells, in our nerve cells. And they fold and unfold with this difference in pH, and they eventually clump together into what's known as I'll think about it in a minute.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah. Yeah, I was disappointed when I read your book and it said you talked about tomatoes aren't necessarily good. And I love tomatoes.
Yeah. I think that they're the big source of inclusion bodies. That's what I was trying to think about.
Yeah.
But if you understand that we have to eat poison plants because there is no other type, they just can't live unless they have a poison that keeps them free of problems. You have an example of the necessity of poison, like with our elm trees, that beetle that killed so many millions and millions.
Yep.
Well, it does not have the correct poison in it in order to kill these beetles.
Right.
And what's going on right now is that they're trying to find the trees that have this poison so they can replant it. But the foods we eat are full of these poison. Now, nature knew this too, and it knew that we had to be protected from these poisons, particularly the nerve cells, or the nerve cells that are the most susceptible to it. And so it made what's called the blood-brain barrier, and that allowed it put the blood-brain barrier in to protect the brain from the blood rushing through the brain. Mm. And what happens to us eventually is that as we grow older, we're living far beyond what the nature provided for us. Then a number of things will cause that blood-brain barrier to deteriorate and become less and less helpful, less and less protective. You might have there are genes that actually deteriorate the blood-brain barrier after a number of years, starting about 50 or so. Every time that you fall and hit your head hard, you probably have an area of the blood-brain barrier that gets damaged permanently. I just was reading yesterday about children who play football and so forth, and the ones who have had concussions, they can pick up differences in these children after having the concussion, emotional differences. Right. Neurological differences, showing that damage and falling and tumbling on ice and so forth are all things that also degrade that blood-brain barrier. And that's where the dementia comes in. The treatment is a different thing because you have to be aware of where these poisons are and then prepare your meals in a way that reduces them, because you don't have to entirely get rid of them, but you have to get them below the point at which they cause the dementia. Mm. Now, that is I don't know if that's simple or not, but it is the reason that dementia exists.
Yeah, and it's different for everyone. Everyone has a different level of sensitivity to it all.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah. Well, is there anything you want to finish up on? I think we're coming on to our last few minutes here. If there's something you'd like to cover before we go.
No, I'm pretty well. There's so much to cover, Ray, that I
Yeah.
don't know how to start or end it. I think it just people can realize that the reason we have dementias is that because we are forced to eat foods that have poisons in them. The foods come from plants. The plants need the poisons in order to live. Otherwise, if they don't live, we don't get them as food.
Mm,
And our defense against these poisons, a defense that starts out really in very primitive creatures like jellyfish and goes all the way up to more advanced people, more advanced creatures like us,
yeah.
is uh, this blood-brain barrier. And that deteriorates, then allows more poisons to get into the brain. And so treatment comes from knowing how to avoid the excesses that make you go downhill.
Right. Right. Well, I'm gonna in the show notes, I'm gonna put your website address where people can find your books, because you've written a number of books, but and we'll be looking forward to your newest one. Um, but yeah, I want to grab that newer one that you just put up. What's the name of what's the title of that? The one that's out.
My newest one is put out actually last year, and that's how I recovered from dementia. There's so much that's happened since that time that I had to write another book, which is the second book in that series.
Yeah.
And that I haven't named yet. I'm considering a name.
Yeah, yeah. So I'll put your website up, and everyone will have a way of getting the book and contacting you if they'd like to talk more.
Yes, I encourage you to contact me. I'd love to get your comments, and I will be sure to answer them.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for your time, Bill. Um, have a great day, and we'll catch up again soon.
Good, Ray. I enjoyed being with you, and I hope that what I said wasn't too confusing.
No, no, it's all good. All good stuff. Thanks again, Bill. Have a wonderful day.
You do too.
Yeah. Bye-bye.